Hello and welcome to episode 57 of Teams on Air. This is Praveen Malu, Product Marketing Manager for Microsoft Teams and your host for the show today. In this episode, we're talking to Valorem about their journey with Microsoft Teams, use cases within Valorem, how they're using Microsoft Teams for project management and client management as well as some business benefits. So without further ado, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you're celebrating with your loved ones today. You will also see a Microsoft Pulse on your right-hand side, so definitely fill in the Pulse. We'd love to hear from you. We also have a live Q&A going, so send in your questions. We'd love to answer some of that on the show, if not during Q&A roundup after the show. If you are watching this on demand, definitely like and subscribe our channel. We have our past episodes on aka.ms/TeamsOnAir replay, so if you've missed any show, catch us there. With that, I would love to welcome Jason Ritchey from Valorem. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself and what Valorem does?
Sure, happy to be here. Thanks, Praveen. So I'm the VP of Client Delivery at Valorem. Valorem is a consulting firm that focuses on business change consulting and digital consulting. So we work with organizations to build and execute a plan to essentially push their business forward, whether that's product development or internal operations, things like that. So teams focused on AI, business productivity, custom development, augmented reality.
So all the new hot stuff.
Exactly. So my role at Valorem is really about fostering consistency and excellence for our customer work. So radiating best practices across the organization, governing delivery execution and things like that. Anything that we need to do to just ensure we have a consistent and excellent customer experience.
Great. So you've been in the business for a long time, and you've been using collaboration tools and productivity tools to quite some degree to run your business. Tell us a little bit about why you started using Microsoft Teams. What was the need you saw in the organization that brought you to start using Teams, and what has that journey been so far?
Yeah, sure. So we've always leveraged the entirety of Microsoft's business productivity stack. And so we were excited and curious when Teams came out to see how that might fit. We are a global company. We've got employees in 20 states, offices in 3 countries. And so how we connect and collaborate and communicate is critical to the success of our business.
And what are those 3 countries?
India, Germany, and the United States.
Awesome.
Yeah. So our teams were aware of Slack. A few of them had used it to see if it could help in any of their communications. But as part of the early adopter program, we were actually able to be one of the first customers to get Teams in our production environment.
So back in November last year.
Correct. It was about 12 months ago. And so what we wanted to do was understand, obviously with the breadth of the tools we're already using from Microsoft, where Teams fit. And so we gave it to one of our larger project teams. We wanted to understand how they would use it organically. So we essentially gave them Microsoft's best practices, but then we didn't govern any structure around it beyond that. Just say, use this, figure out where it lands. And after about 3 months in, not only were they embracing Teams, but they were actually excelling with it. And so we were able to slowly start rolling that out more broadly. And we used their lessons learned to inform our own best practices. And so now, 12 months later, over 80% of our organization is actively using Teams today.
Great. And Teams is such a broad product. You can be using in different kinds of teams and different sizes of teams as well. How do you see Teams kind of helping in some real life scenarios in the organization today? You mentioned you using it for engineering projects, managing your engineering projects, given that you're running a lot of client projects within the organization, dev, QA, and that sort of stuff. So tell us a little bit about engineering projects and how Teams has helped running those.
Sure. So we've got projects of all types, shapes, styles of work. But these projects for our customers are the core of our business. It's what we do as a business. So project teams, whether it's an engineering project or other types of projects, are engaging with practice areas across the organization, across the different geographies, on project deliverables, releases, these roadmaps I mentioned for our customers. And so it's really easy today to have these hallway conversations, one-off conversations, a Skype for Business IM, or just forgetting to CC someone on an email.
Right.
Those create challenges in any project, right? But that gets exacerbated when you have people geographically dispersed. right? And they're not in the same physical location. So transparency has actually been the biggest benefit on these engineering projects that we've seen thus far. So having folks that are in different time zones be able to go back and participate in a conversation maybe they weren't an active participant in, but gain the context and understanding from that conversation has been a huge key to keeping everyone connected.
Right. You don't have to call someone to understand what's been happening in a project, for example.
Right. Or you don't have to worry about missing something that happened maybe when you were sleeping in a different time zone as well. So that's been key. Another thing that is missing nowadays with these geographically dispersed organizations is the concept of a war room. So in development, these engineering projects, when we were a smaller organization, you could huddle everyone in the conference room, before, during, and after a deployment or a release, and kind of go through the motions together, keep everyone on the same page, and kind of run a tight ship, if you will.
Right.
That gets very hard when folks are in different countries and time zones. So Teams has allowed us a platform for a digital war room of sorts. Everyone can get on and communicate live together. Everyone sees the same release notifications, sees the notes from the QA teams coming in live, and everyone can kind of huddle around that and participate together. So
you mentioned release notes. Tell me a little about your integration with tools like Visual Studio that your dev teams might be using on a day-to-day basis, right? So they're using those tools and they're using Teams. How do the two integrate together in that environment?
So Visual Studio Team Services is one of the key integrations that we use for our engineering teams. We use several integrations across the types of projects, but this one is key. It allows us to have automated notifications around new builds that get done, new releases that go out, and that's across all of our environments. So when you have a project team that has a team for all of their release environments, they're able to go quickly understand what's the current state of that team. Has something been pushed to, a build been pushed to a certain branch, and then see any of the associated commentary from that. Has QA found an issue with that? And so being able to track and see all of that in one place, they're already in Teams all day long, and then kind of seeing those live updates as things happen in the environment has been a really good key for our team to stay on top of.
And you're able to do that with Visual Studio integration in Microsoft Teams, bringing in some release notes and your bug triage items, for example, right within where your teams are working.
That's correct, and it's all automated.
Yeah, and on the screen you can see we have pulled up a real live example. This is from Valorem's live environment. They've been kind enough to actually show this and share this with us. This great integration that they have, and you can see the release notes being dropped directly into the channel, and here it's the dev channel.
That's correct.
So, Jason, you have your teams living in Microsoft Teams, kind of spending a lot of time collaborating, creating content as well, right?
Yeah.
So you're running your engineering projects. That's great. They also have this expectation, and that's what I'm seeing internally at Microsoft, that they can access some of these internal tools and workflows that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? So being able to run your internal operations, and I think you've been using Teams to a great degree for those scenarios as well. Throw some light there.
Yeah, sure. So obviously we started with the core of our business, which is the project delivery for clients. But there's this other part of the business, which is project delivery internally for internal stakeholders. So internal IT initiatives, HR initiatives, Teams allows those operations teams to collaborate and to track projects, internal projects together. So whether it's an internal initiative to upgrade a tool that we use or event planning or anything like that, it keeps everyone on the same page there. This is where key integrations like the standard Office integrations come in handy.
That's huge.
Being able to put in direct integration with Excel, direct integration with our SharePoint repositories, allows people to track things, co-author directly inside the team, keep everyone on track. We've also used it for, SOC compliance reviews and things like that, right? To go through checklists together and make sure that everyone that's on that V team in terms of managing an audit or a review can stay on the same page.
That's great. And Teams is a pretty open platform as well. It's not just the Office integration that you alluded to as well, as being able to extend Teams to your own needs, being able to customize and build on top of it so you can meet your unique Teams needs. You've been working on some of that custom work. Why don't you share what you're doing in that space with us?
Sure. So we've just started a proof of concept, what we're calling the Valorem bot. And
Love the name, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. And so what we're trying to do here is build a bot, a Q&A bot in Teams that allows our folks to get easy access to questions from those operations or HR teams that maybe they would have had to have gone and kind of hunted for previously.
Right, yeah.
So if you're new to the company, getting quick access to onboarding information that maybe you can't find anymore from your first day, or trying to get the link again to go file a vacation request, or those kind of things. We wanted to give folks an easy way. They're in Teams all day now anyway. Let's give them a quick way to do that. And all of this was built on the Azure Bot Framework and the Azure Lewis Foundation. So anyone can do this, right? It's not like we've spent...
When you say Lewis, I'm like, oh, okay, what is that? This sounds so complicated. But
yeah. So the language understanding intelligence services is just a service that Azure provides.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. Everyone can kind of participate in this, and it's not like we've spent hundreds of hours developing this proof of concept.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of Teams, which is, we're leveraging all the platform work and the frameworks to enable you to kind of bring intelligence and bot frameworks right into Teams without having to do a lot of dev work yourself, because that's kind of part of the framework. Let's move on to the third use case, and this is one I find very interesting. You mentioned you using Teams for biz dev work, and this is something which is new to me. So why don't you share a little more about biz dev work that you're doing across these three different locations that you mentioned in India and Germany and US, and how you've been able to bring the teams together using Teams?
Yeah, and it's new to us as well. So this is something we've started looking at recently as we got client projects, internal projects on Teams. How else could we use this? How else could it benefit us? And so as a digital consulting firm that's working on these business strategy projects and strategic consulting, when we're building roadmaps for customers, that's going to cross a large number of our practice areas, right? So you may have 5, 6, 7 different practice leads or folks from those practices participating and trying to collaborate together on a proposal or on a roadmap for a customer. So we're trying to reduce the back and forth there, the calls, the emails, and get everyone in a central place where when we have a customer and we're working on a digital strategy or a roadmap, everyone can collaborate together, have an open conversation there, and then co-author documents and roadmaps together to try and reduce that time to get that roadmap and proposal done forward.
And co-author right within Teams, right, without having to even leave that hub that you're
in. Absolutely. And there's a hidden benefit there as well. So as we've started to roll that business development team out, we have channels for each of these kind of opportunities that we're working. It allows those folks that are in those other practice areas the transparency again to see what else is happening. Where else could they potentially lend a hand? Where else could they potentially help accelerate something or expand a roadmap in an area that makes sense for the customer?
Awesome. And I think with that, we're moving on to the fourth one, since we're talking about 4 ways. You have a lot of clients, that's kind of core to what you do.
Yep.
You're interacting with a lot of different clients on a lot of different projects. How are you looking at kind of Teams to manage communications, with your clients and internally with your key stakeholders, your management teams, and just keeping everyone in the know? Internally at Microsoft, we've seen a lot of success, with communication channels, kind of reducing and being more effective. So if you can share your experience at Valorem, that'll be great.
Yeah. So in terms of internal stakeholders, right? At-mentions have been huge.
Yep.
So I'm a part of a lot of different teams, but some of those teams I don't participate in actively every day. It's more there as being an internal stakeholder. So when someone mentions me, I get a specific notification that says, hey, Jason, someone's asking something of you, or they've got something that they want you to see.
Get to work.
Yeah, get to work. So that allows me to dive right in and see that there's action for me. We're able to do that more broadly too with channel at-mentions. So let's say project leadership on a project has just been made aware of a change to a release date or a change in direction on something. They're able to at-mention the entire channel, and so everyone in that channel gets a notification that there's something that they need to go learn or look up in that channel. So that's been key. In terms of internal stakeholders and internal communication, we are using this with our management teams. So the leadership team uses it to talk about business planning, do our MBR reviews, and other things But then we're also able to use that bidirectionally with other management teams. So as you extend down into the next layer of management, being able to have an open conversation there and talk about changes and have that kind of bidirectional communication and so on and so forth. And those managers are able to do that with their employees. So to try and drive some consistency in message there, right, throughout the organization and keep everyone on the same page. From an external stakeholder perspective, there's a new feature that came out in the last month or two called guest access.
Yeah, back in September.
Yeah, and so when we first started with Teams, that wasn't a feature, and so we were trying to figure out how this made sense for us. We've actually been asking for this feature for a while, so I'm glad that the team delivered on that.
Yeah.
It's a great new feature. What we're trying to do now is figure out where it fits within our framework and our best practices. Being able to invite the customer in is a huge benefit for us, because it's not just about keeping employees engaged, it's about keeping stakeholders engaged, whether internal or external, keeping them in the know, bringing them in, and bringing them along the journey.
And you already have that space where you're kind of living and breathing the projects. Why don't you just bring in and inform your clients too?
Correct. Instead of having to coalesce that information and try to get it back out to them, bring them into that. So that's something we're really excited about. We haven't rolled it out in any broad sense yet, but we're trying to figure out what the best practices are for inviting in clients and collaborating directly with them, and that's something we hope to roll out soon.
That's awesome, Jason. So with that, we have 4 ways, but we have more, isn't it, Jason?
Yes.
Using Teams, not just in in these 4 categories, but really a lot of other scenarios for a lot of fun stuff as well. Let's look at what that looks like in Valorem.
Yeah, fun for some people. So we've got this using for our fantasy football league. We've got March Madness, all these types of things that we're doing. Here you can see I've getting called out for somehow being up by 25 points and managing to lose a game in fantasy football. I'll mention I'm actually terrible at that. But lots of fun groups here where we can enjoy each other, right, and participate in some other things. So aside from that, on the fun note, we do use it as a platform for folks to get together for different committees and things like that. So we have a charitable organization, Valorem Gives. We have committees that are geared around culture and employee engagement. Those folks are able to kind of coalesce in teams, connect, and these are folks that maybe wouldn't be able to connect day to day in their daily work. They're able to come together, talk about changes that they want to make, events that they want to sponsor, those kind of things, and then use some of the third-party integrations like Poly or Forms to take polls. Maybe they can't all get together to make a decision. They can take a decision in Teams as people have time to participate.
Yeah, and we have more than 150 apps, so being able to pick and choose the apps that you'll really like, and bringing that in Teams.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great, Jason. So we looked at 4 ways and more. We looked at engineering teams. We looked at running and managing your internal IT operations as well. We looked at biz dev teams and just keeping everyone in the know, all your stakeholders. I wanted to kind of call out that, hey, for folks who are not on Teams today, you can go to aka.ms/ Microsoft Teams, or rather teams.microsoft.com/start, and that's where you can find more information, ways to get started with Microsoft Teams. There's a trial sign up, so if you're not an Office customer, you can go to the trial sign up page and start using Microsoft Teams today. And Jason, you had something to add there as well in terms of call to action for our listeners today.
Yeah, Valorem's productivity team is doing webinars and workshops. We have some specifically around Teams and the other productivity tools. So if anyone's interested in that, go to valorem.com/events and sign up for one of our upcoming webinars or workshops.
That's awesome. So we have a few questions coming in as well today from our live listeners. And one of the first questions that I see here on the screen is, what's the additional cost of using Teams? I'm already an Office customer. How do I get about evaluating what that looks like from a cost standpoint?
Yeah, it's been tough. It's free. So we have not had to pay $1 for Teams beyond our current subscription. We're on E5, but Teams is included in most Office plans for free. So there's really no cost to us for engaging in Teams. Yeah.
The second question I have here for you is, we looked at the VSTS integration. That looks amazing, but what does it mean to enable that integration? Is it out of the box, or you had to do some custom work for that?
Yeah, we did have to click a button, but yeah, it's out of the box. All the integration that we talked about from Poly, Forms, VSTS, GitHub, aside from the bot that we've developed, all of that has been out of the box technology.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think this is sort of a trick question. So you've been using Yammer, you mentioned during our conversation, and I have a question here, which is exactly hitting the same point, which is, hey, I'm using Teams and also on Yammer. How do I differentiate between the use cases across Teams and Yammer? And I think you had some great insights to share.
Yeah.
So if you can replay that for our audience.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we think about it in terms of the kind of inner loop and outer loop. So the inner loop is our project teams that are working and collaborating every day together. Those folks are using Teams to collaborate, to stay in touch, to stay connected. The outer loop is the broader organization. Notifications and communications out to the broader organization usually are happening in Yammer, so that we can ensure that the entire company gets those messages.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We have a few more questions here online, which we will try to answer in the Q&A roundup. So thanks for taking those questions here live on the show, Jason. Thanks for joining us today. Do join us on 8th of December for our next show, which is Teams in Education, where we talk about new learning experiences in classroom and beyond with Yusuf Sajid and Delanda Coleman. They'll be joining us on the next show. So until then, goodbye and thanks for joining.